What did you learn today? And if you start first, you might get not a whole lot of answers. You'll have to kind of set the tone, right, as the person who's organizing this. But eventually, that little question, what did you learn today, can go a long way in helping you build that culture. Celebrate effort and progress, not just outcomes. So Blake was just talking about, right? It's not perfection. It's not the outcome. It's not the excellence even. It's the process to get to the excellence that needs to be celebrated. Welcome to the Culture Base podcast. I'm Dustin. He's Blake. We are the Culture Base. Happy March. Today we're going to get into a little bit of luck of the Irish.
You're standing behind that, huh?
Luck of the Irish.
Luck of the Irish.
Developing a growth mindset, are you? You're lucky, wee lad. That's more Scottish. Anyway. I do whatever I can to get Blake laughing at the beginning of these. If you're laughing too, bonus, but just ignore me for the first 30 seconds. Now you can start listening to me now. At the Culture Base, I want to remind you that we're about helping leaders know what they're about, show where they're going, and develop a scalable team to get them there. If you're listening on an audio podcast platform, we would appreciate that good old-fashioned high 5-star review. Whatever platform you're listening on. If you're watching on YouTube, hello there. So glad that you're here. Go ahead and hit the like button. That's the thumbs up. Subscribe and ring the bell so that you're notified every time we release new content just like this for you. This is a weekly podcast. I don't know if you've discovered that yet. We're almost 80 episodes in. There's a lot of podcasts you can go back and listen to if you're just now joining us. So catch up. Binge it. You ever binge a podcast, Blake?
No. Yeah, that's not true. Yeah, I get into seasons of podcast listening that's like I hyper focus, and so then I'll listen to a ton.
Gotcha. Do you still listen to podcasts?
I still listen to podcasts.
Blake asked me that off camera earlier, and I go, really? We believe in podcasts. That's why we're still doing it. Yeah. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it. So, yeah, we'll remind you that you can find us on all of the socials. Been a minute since I've said that. At the Culture Base, BASE, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, places like that. You can also find us online at theculturebase.com. I think we have a new calendar link over there for you now so that you can click on that and get a 30-minute strategy session with us. We'd love to chat with you about how we can help you know what you're about, show where you're going, and develop a scalable team to get you there. Also, while you're on there, go ahead and click on the resources tab. Get a couple of free resources we have for you there. The Scalability Playbook, the best interview questions ever, is a free PDF guide, and the free ebook version of Uncultured by Blake Bear. All right, let's get into today's episode. Today we're talking about, without the Irish accent or Scottish or whatever that was, developing a growth mindset culture. Growth mindset culture. What do we mean by this, Blake?
Yeah, I mean, growth mindset is like the idea that we can advance. We have the abilities, the intelligence to overcome any problem. It is the idea that we're always work in progress. If we put in effort, we learn enough, we can overcome, right? Like that's the kind of mindset that says problems arise, we can solve. Fixed mindset says whatever is, and will never be able to change, right? Like the reason I asked Dustin if he listens to podcasts still, he didn't throw that in there. He makes it sound like I'm some dummy.
That's what people laugh at.
I heard it too when I asked him. I was like, yeah, that was a really dumb question. I'd love to bring those words back in. Anyway, was because I had been listening to the Founders podcast, which if you haven't listened to the Founders podcast, you should. And I was listening to the guy who was who did Hyundai. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but the car manufacturing company. The guy had so many businesses that either got taken from the communist South Korea, war hit, like the day after he got paid off his loan on his building, the building burnt down. Like everything kept happening to this guy. This guy had every opportunity and should have just said, I'm done. And in fact, the thing that makes me think a fixed mindset here is his dad was a farmer. And as he ran away to go start doing stuff in life, his dad came to him and pleaded with him and said, you're just a farmer. You will never get past this. You will never be able to do anything else. And he was saying it out of fear and love at the same time because he didn't want to see his kid fail, right? That's fixed mindset that says I only see you as this and you're never going to amount to anything else. But growth mindset says there's not a chance in hell I'm not going to be able to get to that point. This guy legitimately, and I know this is not a podcast about the founder of Hyundai, but this guy legitimately was driving on a bridge, fell off into the water, and was trying to get out of his Jeep before he died. And the thought he had was, what I don't want to happen is that everyone thinks that I ran away because he was in insurmountable amount of debt at the time. And he said, I don't want people to think I gave up. And he got out of the water and survived. But the thought was growth. It was, I don't want that to be a legacy I leave. I want the idea of accomplishing something greater, bigger, better. So that, without giving like the definition of this is this, that's what fix says. I am what I am and I'll never be able to change. Growth says I am what I am today, but not what I am tomorrow. And I'm going to be what I'm going to be, or I'm going to become what I need to be for tomorrow.
That's really good. That's really good. So if you're watching on YouTube, this is the podcast right here. This is come on, focus in on my camera. There it is. Founders Podcast. That's what it looks like. It's just Founders. I thought it was the Founders, but it's just Founders. Another free resource for you right at the top. I haven't, at the time of this recording, I'm just about to start reading a book called Mind Your Mindset by Michael Hyatt. And this just oddly aligns with us recording this podcast. It was not, the idea of this episode didn't come from that at all. What I love about it is the reason I picked up the book to read in the first place, the reason I'm intrigued to read it is because it's a personal thing for you to mind your mindset, growth versus fixed, right? What we're talking about here today, though, is how do you take that mindset throughout your organization? And here's what I would say to you, leader, team member, no matter where you're at on the org chart, your mindset is contagious without you ever having to say a word. Your mindset is contagious without you ever having to say a word. So if you have a fixed mindset, people around you will have a fixed mindset. If you have a growth mindset, people around you will have a growth mindset. You will attract what you are. That's just the law of nature, right? We see that all the time. You attract other people that are like you. Those are the people that you want to be around. That's how it works, right? So if you have a fixed mindset, you're going to surround yourself with people with fixed mindset. And and what we're trying to paint the picture here today, if it hasn't already been painted for you, is that a growth mindset will build yourself, your organization, your culture, your scalability, all of those things way faster than a fixed mindset will. A fixed mindset, you might get there if you get lucky, but you probably won't. You probably won't. So the problem here today is the fixed mindset behaviors. Sorry, I didn't do our little chicka-ching, chicka-ching, chicka-ching. Now I don't even remember where it's at. Here it is. Here it comes. The problem.
So here's the problem. Here's the problem. That's funny. Anyway, I will say about the problem. The number one problem is we, at this point in life, as someone is in your organization, you don't have to teach them fixed mindset. You don't. It has already been taught since day one of their life. Fixed mindset is the prevalent mindset in our world. Growth mindset is not. Okay. Otherwise, I think we would have far, far more innovative world, far greater technology, because growth mindset is what gets us there. The problem is we give this idea of perfection as being what you are, as this value-based statement. This is why I think 100% perfection is the enemy of really, really great stuff. Because where does the imposter syndrome come from? Perfectionism. The idea that I should already be something, that I don't make mistakes. No. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone does. But we need to be about the idea of progress over perfection. In fact, it's kind of funny. I had this little one of our team members at Ridgeline. We have a Ridgeline leadership podcast, and they created the jingle in the beginning, and I love it. The words are progress, not perfection, just head in the right direction. And I just love that thing to keep going back to. Sometimes I'll get it stuck in my head and I'm like, that's right. It is not about being perfect as you are. We're all works in progress. Our organizations are works in progress. And if that's true, then we will always continually be a work in progress, getting to a better level. But the problem is we don't build cultures like that. Right? You have to use so much intentionality to get to a culture like that. And we have so much fear of failure in our organizations because we value perfection against progress.
Yeah.
We say, why did we make a mistake? Good night. You guys, are you even using your brain? Okay. Who wouldn't be afraid to speak up? Who wouldn't be afraid to try something new? Everyone would be. Then all of a sudden the performance pressure comes in, and guess what happens? You make more mistakes because there is such a harsh, if you make a mistake, then your value is you're horrible. So what do? We throw this on other people. Well, that wasn't my fault. It was their fault. And all of a sudden we got finger pointing going back and forth. And see, we didn't even have to do anything to create this. It just happens because we kept a value of perfection over progress.
Right.
And then your whole team is going to be resistant to any change happening in the organization. And because when you say, hey, I think we need to try something new and do this, what does that mean? You cannot have change without failures. I'm sorry. Anyone who believes you can have change without having growth and progressive failures to find out what is right about the change, nobody's going to do it. Okay. So people are going to be resistive to it. You're going to be like, this is great technology. And they're like, we're not going to use it because if we screw up, you're going to blame it on us, not that we just are trying. So I don't know if that builds the problem enough. Hopefully I built enough tension to understand this is the consequence of allowing a fixed mindset culture and valuing perfection above progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into the solution. So I mentioned a few minutes ago in this episode about you as the leader understanding what it takes to change a growth mindset for yourself, or change into a growth mindset for yourself, and how that trickles down into your team. And so what we want to focus on here in the solution is to implement a growth culture framework, program, initiative, whatever word you want to use, right? But there's a couple things that I would suggest as you're going about that you consider. Number one, build some learning opportunities into daily work, right? It's the old adage of you should be learning something new every day. What did you learn today? One of my favorite sports radio shows / podcasts, because everything's a podcast now, right? They end every episode by going around the room and everybody that's on the podcast, what did you learn today? What did you learn today? That would be a simple way to end your shifts or end your office time, is if everybody gathered around the water cooler and you just said, what did you learn today? What did you learn today? And if you start first, you might get not a whole lot of answers. You'll have to kind of set the tone, right, as the person who's organizing this. But eventually, that little question, what did you learn today, can go a long way in helping you build that culture. Celebrate effort and progress, not just outcomes. So Blake was just talking about, right? It's not perfection. It's not the outcome. It's not the excellence even. It's the process to get to the excellence that needs to be celebrated. Hey, we moved the ball down the field. All right. We got 4 first downs on that drive. Let's celebrate that progress, right? Because the previous drive we were 3 and out, right? Just using football analogies, because at the time of recording this, we're coming up on the Super Bowl. Lastly, establish feedback loops that encourage development. Feedback loops are kind of what I would think to be a sneaky growth mindset culture hack. You want a sneaky hack for growth mindset culture in your organization, develop feedback loops that work. And here's the thing about feedback loops that I've seen often is a lot of organizations will try these feedback loops. They'll say, we tried it this one way, it didn't work. feedback cannot live, it cannot thrive in our organization. Feedback loops look very different from organization to organization, depending on what product you're putting out, depending on what your process is, depending on the makeup of your people. Every single organization is completely unique. And so the process, even the feedback process, is going to be completely unique as well. Don't let that hinder you from building it, though. Don't let that hinder you from continuing. That would be a fixed mindset. Hey, we did it. It didn't work. We're not doing it anymore. That's a fixed mindset. A growth mindset is we did it. It didn't work. How can we make it work? Because we know it's important. That's the growth mindset. I feel like you got something you want to add to that?
No.
Love it. Let's get into the action steps.
All right. So for leaders, we're looking at action steps here. If anyone's like, whoa, by this, what we're about to say here, because we say it on absolutely everything. And so much of the culture-based podcast is truly this. It's just modeling what you want to see in your organization.
That's it.
How do you model learning from failures openly, not hiding it, but celebrating? Hey, good catch on that. Good catch on that. Yep, that was a miss. That was my fault. I apologize. Good catch. We don't do a good enough job exemplifying this kind of stuff. And it ends up allowing everyone else to believe, because we're not making these mistakes openly, that we're perfect and that they've got to strive to be at that level. Yep. That is just it's not healthy. That's not transformative for your team. This growth mindset, I'm trying to think of how to say this. When you celebrate the misses, when you celebrate the things, people start seeing, I can be creative. So much of growth mindset is about creativity and about their ability to problem solve. It is astounding to me, the amount of people who in one breath say, today's generations can't problem solve. They can't do this. They can't do this. It's astounding to me that the same people say, well, they're not risking, they won't say that. They're not taking chances. They're not doing this, but we've never given them the opportunity to. Yeah. Because we've completely said, good luck. You failed. You succeeded. You're out. You're in. It's not healthy. Okay. Yeah. So we've got to create good learning objectives and teach through the process of those objectives when you're trying to grow a growth mindset. Experimentation needs to be prized in the right setting. So intentionality is creating a setting that allows for experimentation, not just, hey, guys, take some risks, but like, if they're the wrong risk, I'll come at you. No, don't do that. Like, hey, we've got a item that we need to work on right now. And I'm going to take metal fabrication because it's a world I'm in right now. There's some metal that cost $1,000 per sheet, 10 foot by 4 foot. Let's say there's $1,000 sheet. And then there's another type of metal that's $60 for that same size sheet. Which one do we want to experiment with? Probably the one that's not going to cost us $1,000 and we can get a lot of the same mentality out of the one that's cheaper, right? It makes sense, but it only makes sense to us because we understand that that's a healthy way to experiment. You have to show that to your team to help them understand, here's where we experiment, here's how we experiment. But on the flip side, let's maybe not try to experiment with the really expensive one. Let's make sure we're dialed in. So you're giving good guardrails for how to do this, okay? I love sharing stories. You guys know that. Share your story. Share your growth journey. Share when someone's like, gosh, I'll never be able to be where you are. Like, share that you also believe that about somebody else at one point. Share that. Share that, hey, 15 years ago, here's where I was. 10 years ago, here's where I was. Yeah. Okay? You're only seeing the part where I'm compounding very quickly and defining that that's where I've always been. It's not. I had to fail for long periods of time to get to this point. Okay. And I had to endure. That's the word I think that we get good growth mindset when you don't just say fail and overcome and act like that was in an hour and a half movie. It's the idea that fail and overcome took years, maybe
endurance
season, right? Like, I think we just miss pretty hard. And I love reading the Bible. I'm not trying to make this a religious podcast, but I love reading the Bible. But one thing that's impactful to me about that, especially when I read about some of these Bible characters, is that the breaths between paragraphs could be 40 years. What, 40 years? You're telling me that they had to come to that point for 40 years and evolve and transform into who they were to take on the next thing?
That's some growth mindset.
Huh?
That's some growth mindset.
That's growth mindset. You endure to come to that next stage. Okay. And it's not about going to the next stage and the next stage and the next stage. Sometimes our growth needs to be endurance-based growth, because the next stage is going to require someone who's got some thicker skin in some different situations. And sometimes you only gain that by going through some fire and getting some calluses. Okay.
Yeah.
So I know that this has been like a harsh leaders. Hey, you got to start emulating, start developing your team, start helping them understand that these are components of growth mindset. But you can't do that sitting behind a desk completely separated. You cannot have influence and impact without presence. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. As heavy leader, because this is one of those subjects that falls heavily on the leaders, but I do want to say for team members, there are a couple action steps you can take as well. Number one, set some personal learning goals for yourself within your organization. That'll help you exemplify, right? We always talk about leading up quite a bit as well. It'll help you exemplify that. So set some personal learning goals, share those with your direct report so that they understand, hey, I'm out here to learn, I'm out here to grow, start modeling that. And secondly, I would say is to seek and provide learning feedback opportunities. We talked about these feedback loops earlier. Seek and provide that stuff too, right? Provide it to those around you and under you. Set that tone, right? But also in the leading up, go, hey, ask your direct report, how can I grow? How can I get better? That exemplifies the growth mindset, not the fixed mindset. And you will be greatly rewarded either in that career, in that organization, or your next organization because of it. So any last thoughts you want to add to this, Blake?
No.
Love it. Next week, we're back with episode 80. It feels big. I don't know why, but I say that about every 5 episodes anyway. I'm like, episode 70 feels big. 75, right? Episode 87. Episode 80, effective conflict resolution strategies for teams. We are at that point in the year where we have, all right, we got some goals. We're nearing the end of Q1. How are we feeling about it? There's probably some tension beginning to mount. Are we going to hit these Q1 goals or are we not? So let's talk about some effective conflict resolution strategies for teams next time on the Culture Based Podcast, episode 80. We'll talk to you then. See you next week.